Episode 6 from Toronto, '06. No, not really. I hate the six. It's a fucking stupid thing. Drake can go fuck himself in the six. The six. His fucking hot light bling. He's dusting the floor. If you watch that video, it's pretty funny. It's more of a fucking meme, in my opinion. But episode 6, Taipei Typhoons, Nate Bell. One of the softest spoken people in the league, in my opinion. I'm not saying like verbally, because he's very animated when you talk with him. But he doesn't say much in Discord, and when he does, you listen because he's coming from word of wisdom. Um, Happens when you're a teacher, so it does happen. But he's never missed the playoffs. Nate Bell's never missed. I'm not going to be joking around too much with Nate because Nate's a good guy. Not like the Yins is a bunch of fucking ding dongs drinking your Bush Light and whatever other fucking swill you guys have. The Waterloo tribe was at the Waterloo tournament for the World Championships of 95, 2023, was the last tribe I had to go and attend. I attended Sagathon, I attended High, and then Waterloo. And then there's no NHL 95 tournament this year live like what we did last year in Toronto. But hopefully in the future it will be at my place. So right here near Niagara Falls. However, season 2, Nate Bell was an expansion team, so he was never a part of the original draft. He came in, and I think he drafted expansion drafted his team. Whereas there was a few teams that inherited teams. We'll get to those ones later on, but Nate was one of the few that did not inherit a team. But overall, Nate's been a strong and consistent player. I'm keeping my head in the way because of what his trajectory is. This right here, a breakout season for Nate, seems like in the cards. It just seems very obvious. There's no drop off in this guy's game. 20 wins, season 1, 38, 40, 40, 47, 50, 51. He had third round exit, first round, third round, second round, second round. Bad thing is, last 2 years, been against Sagathon, eliminated by Sagathon. So there's some consistencies in the top 6 to 10 teams. It depends on who they get eliminated by, but there's starting to become a rivalry here between the Waterloo and Sagathon tribe, between Sagathon and Nate Bell. Not the ringleader of the Waterloo, but I think that's Moses is the Waterloo ringleader. I think I just moved my head and you fucker got to see it. Doesn't matter. Seems almost like if I have a backdrop instead of actually the board behind me because of where my head's positioned. Doesn't fucking matter. But we'll get down to business here. So, and I think adding some light to my face will enlighten the situation. No, fuck that. So, Nate's had some really good seasons and he's continuously progressing. So, if we look at the board, this doesn't happen to all teams. He went from 20 wins, 38, 40, 40, 49, 51. Win percentage gone up every single season. I think the only dip he had, well, there wasn't really a dip. It seemed odd that he had 240-win seasons, but his win percentage was 682 and 652. And you can see there, though, they were both 60-game seasons, 66-game seasons, but he had less. Which one was that one? He had 8 overtime losses compared to 4 the year prior. That's how come his win percentage was higher, because he had less losses. He had 20 losses in season 4 and 16 in season 5. So improvements. And Nate's win, if we're going to give a projection here, it seems like Nate's going to probably float in around the 15 to 17 losses again this year, and likely to be in like 42, 43 wins range, give or take. Really depends. His division is not as favorable as the Inns, and it's probably the second or third hardest division. I'd put our division as the hardest. It's just a gauntlet, in my opinion. But Nate's not in a favorable one either. He's got Red, he's got Caden, he's got Salvo, Sutton, Caledonia, the Upward Riser, Gier, the Upward Riser, and Sugar Valley. Sugar Valley is not a team to sleep on either. But regarding Nate's strengths, he's very good at tight games. If the game's tied, or he's down by 1, or he's up by 1, going into the third period, you're in trouble. Nate will put you away. That's a lot of his games have been won at that stage of the season, or not the stage of the season, the stage of the game. is won in the third period for him. He sets himself up to get to that sport, that part. He goes to overtime a lot, which means he plays a lot of tight games. But he's likely trying to put you away in the third period if he's up or tied. If you're tied and go to overtime, he tends to lose a little bit more in overtime than he wins, but he's about 50-50. So toss up. He's extremely effective down low. Below the faceoff circles in the offensive zone, it's very difficult to play against him. He knows how to kind of jam the corners. And I'm not talking about pinning the goalie. I'm not talking about dead man. And I'm not talking about anything else regarding like knocking off the net or anything of those details. I'm talking that he knows how to cycle the puck down low. He knows how to play the players. And he also knows how to chart the net to a degree where he can put his wingers in position to knock it in. Just it's the tap-ins that he does. It's like the players he uses knows how to kind of just Brendan Gallagher, Thomas Holstrom type players just like pop that puck in the net, agitate the goalies. That's pretty much what his players do. Very good at manual goalie. Another one. Not elite, but very good. His weaknesses. Gives up leads. That's what happens when he gets to the overtime. He gives up leads, gets tied, and goes into overtime. He struggles with that. If it's in a tight game, he can lock you down. He can also struggle. More likely, he's not going to struggle. But when he does, he gives up the lead that leads to overtime. Struggles versus checking. Being a Waterloo player, you would think that he would not struggle against it. Nate is different from most of the other Waterloo people. Colin, Bell, Sean, Moses, Sutton to some degree are people, and then now you including Red likely in the Waterloo tribe as well. Those guys are all heavy checkers. They love to check. Nate's not a huge checking person. With Zubov, he was. Before he traded Zubov, he was. He would check a little bit more than he would normally. Now he does. He's not a big checker. Nate is more of the finesse, fuck you, speed kind of type of player. But doesn't take away that he won't try to check. Overall, he's still a very strong checker, but at the same time, too, he tends to play more onto the finesse level and passes the puck a little bit more than most of the Waterloo people, but not as much as most people, like myself, that knows how to turn over the puck every single time. It seems like we're around 40% pass percentage. Is this the year he breaks out of the shadows? Nate's been in the shadow of Sean every single season. Happens when you're the little brother. My brother's a dick, but at the end of the day, he was always in my shadow. Even when we played football, he thought he was better than he wasn't. But this might be the season that Nate does it. He's not in the same conference as Sean, so he doesn't have to worry about that factor. He just has to. He doesn't have Segathon in his division, which he doesn't have to worry about that factor. And all his deep runs in the playoffs were losses against Nick, Autobahn, and Colin. All three of them are not in there. So there's a chance that Nate can get to the shitty bill, the Bruley Cup finals this year. Yeah, he's going to have a tough sledding to get there with the teams that he has to play against. But there's an opportunity for Nate to make a very good cause or a very good statement this year, break his win record total, and get to the Bruley Cup finals for the first time. He's shown that he's got the depth to be able to go to the deep playoff runs. The first round exits that he had were not ideal, but since then he's had a conference final and 2 second round exits. So he's not far off. He's had 7-game series as well. But Nate's going to eventually get there. He will. He has the ability to do it. Then you move to his roster. When doing these videos, I thought that like it would be bluntly obvious like who's a very good team and who's not, and like why they're that, why they're not. Nate is one of the few people that I can actually point out on a regular basis now that his roster is stacked post lockout. One of the few teams that's very stacked post lockout. Goaltending. Patrick Roy only has 3 years left. So he's going to have to find a goalie in the future eventually. But having an 85 average, 86, 84 high low for 3 years, still have a very, very good goaltender the next 3 seasons. Vesa Toskala, not an ideal future plan. Stopgap, bridge goaltending for him. And being the manual goaltender that like he is, Toskala might be able to fill the bill for a couple seasons when Roy retires. Toskala can play a couple seasons. it's post lockout for 2 or 3 years. He's really good, and then he fucking tails off. And it has a low of 43. I think it's in his last year when he was with, I think it was with San Jose. It might be Toscala. I know he played for the Leafs. That might be the 43 overall then, because the Leafs are shit. I fucking hate the Leafs. They can suck a dick. That's why I moved away from the city, so I never had to deal with it. Doug Waite, 75 average, 9 seasons left, 89-63 high low. All of his players on his roster are lows, or like last 4 years of their career are bad. But the rest of their seasons are very good. We're talking like 2 or 3 years post lockout. He's got a stacked team for a long time. John Madden, football. John Madden, hockey. New Jersey Devils. Dallas Stars, possibly. Not sure who else. But 70 overall over 10 seasons. 82-61 high low. Same thing with the next guy below him, Damien Langkow, 82 high, 61 low, 10 seasons, but a 73 overall. A little bit more of a higher average, but 2 solid players to work with. Then you move into Tony Granato, 1-year wonder, kind of maybe just a roster spot for the season. He's going to have to add some forward depth after this year. He's added some draft picks to be able to help himself with that. Maybe trade up and get some other studs in that position. But Tony Granato is 78 for this season and retires. Same thing with Benoit Hogue, 78 overall and retires. And he's got his little gem, Paul Carrillo. 82 average over the next 8, 93 high, 71 low. Korea's a stud. I think the last 2 or 3 years are where he tails into the 70s. Other than that, he's in the 80s, mid to high 80s for the rest of his career. This is where it kind of gets a little, I think, a little touchy, in my opinion. But when I look at the roster overall for their highs, I'm like, wow, okay, great highs. But it's when you look at the lows of these defensemen, you're kind of like, excuse me, where you're going to have to start worrying a little bit. I still don't know why Al McInnes is gone. I don't know why Sergei Zubov is gone. And the players that he added, okay, fair, but Patrick Roy is the only one that I would have actually traded for. Doug Waite is okay, got him from Sugar Valley. But this is going to be his struggle. And Nate plays close games, and having weaker defense is not going to help him. But the seasons where they are good, you can see them right there. I think it's 75, 91, 89, and 85. But Matthew Daniel, 68 over 7, 75, 65 high. You got Matthew Schneider, the mobile defenseman, which is very important to have if you're a Waterloo guy, to be able to have somebody on the breakout or even carry the puck out of the zone and attack like that. Remember, alleys. 79 over the next 8, 91, 75. Schneider is not a bad defenseman for his whole career. He's always good. Serviceable to great. The 91's coming up. I think it's this season or next season is the 91 overall. Lubnar Wisnowski, he's okay. 67 over 13 years. 89 high, 48 low end, which is not good. And I think it's the last like 4 years of his career where it really fucking tanks. I think he has 1 year that where he's an 80 and it drops again to like a 50 something. I think it's the 2014 season. Remember, ratings are going to be modified for some guys, for rookies moving forward, not for the roster guys, because we don't want to impact that because teams have built their roster based on it. And then you got Sammy Salo, 72 over 12, 85 high, 50 low. Salo's another one of those players. Tail end fucking drops off. So Nate's roster is built very well for post-lockout. He's just got to fill in some pieces, especially now that he's added a second-round pick from Audubon. He's got a first and 2 seconds this year, a first and second in 04, 06. So his team is in a very good position to move forward and not going to have many issues. So Nate has got an opportunity to really make this go up. And his trajectory, there's only so far you can go into this because you got 76 games. I don't think it's ever going to happen. We're going to have a perfect season. It might come close. And there's a few teams that I think that can do it. Puss, Bell, maybe Puss and Bell are the only two that have shown that can do it. Nips came close last year. When you look at his record last season, it looked like he had a chance. But Nips folds at some times where he gets distracted or lacks interest in the opponent, which gets him distracted and he shits the bed. But he's known for the shit in the bed. So that was the state of the franchise, the Taipei Typhoons. Next thing, Puss just messages this, and I think it's a good topic to review a little bit. It's the topic of redrafting season one's rosters. I thought it was a pretty cool idea. I'm going to be doing trade trees, but if we recap back to season one, and Puss asked the question, and I don't know why this came out or why it happened, but he asked Salvo, who do you think was picked number one overall ever in the W? He said Roenick. Everybody that's an original W member knows who went first overall ever. Ed Belfour, LHX. In my honest opinion, if we did a redraft now, I think Ed Belfour is still a solid thing. You got to think about it. LHX has not performed as well without Belfour, where he was able to manipulate teams a little bit more because he could rely on Belfour's abilities. Belfour had 20 shutouts. He had like double-digit shutouts for 3 or 4 seasons. I would stick with Belfour. Sammy Smith took Jeremy Roenick. I would have taken probably Fedorov or or a defenseman because Sammy Smith, when you look at his roster with throughout the seasons that he played, he needed more of that high end power. Roenick wasn't the right guy for him. I think Roenick would have should have went maybe 4 or 5 in that draft. It really depended on who was next up in line. And we're going to get to that. So Sammy Smith picked second and went with Jeremy Roenick. I probably would say he would have been probably better off with like a Pavel Bure or Steve Yzerman. But so many of these players in the top 10 are so interchangeable and it depends on preference. Or if you actually look at the NHL player as a whole in their real NHL career, like what was their ability then? Richfield. So Blair picked third and he picked Mario Lemieux. I would not change that pick whatsoever. He should stay with Mario Lemieux. Lemieux's always been good for him, and they'll continue being good for him for another couple seasons. So Richfield made the right decision, in my opinion, to stay with Mario Lemieux. I picked fourth, and I took Team, and we all know how that project turned out last season. I would never change that pick, regardless if I was picking first. I still was going to take Team Solani, regardless. If I was picking anything later, I don't think I would have gotten Solani. So I probably would have had to finagle and make some trades to get that to happen. But I would stick with Solani. Sumter took Pavel Bure. The way Sumter's kind of redone his roster, I think he should have went with maybe a bigger body, maybe a Jagger, who was traded 17 times in the first round, and we really don't know why. But I would probably say Bure was a good pick. I probably would have went Yzerman, Kovalev, Mogilny, anybody with top end speed. But the thing is, with Sumter, we figured out later on that he relies on the bigger body players. So maybe a Mike Modano would have been better suited for him at the spot. But like I said, it's preference. You have to really think about these things. Then Halifax picked 6. He went with Sergei Fedorov. I probably wouldn't never have changed that pick. But the way Halifax played his game, he never really relied on a high end skill. If I were him, I would probably trade out of that pick and drop down a few spots, maybe pick up an extra draft pick. And it's funny too, because the guys did trade draft picks in this expansion is to build up their roster in a specific way. We'll get to those picks in a few minutes because there was a team who traded in the first round. And I look back now in hindsight, I'm like, why did you make that trade? But then, you know what? Fuck it. It happened, and one team's benefited from it still to this day. Bennington Dusters, Steve Yzerman. This doesn't matter because Nips ended up with Yzerman at the end of the shitty bill of season 1. At one, sir, if nobody knows who he is, he was a fucking shitbed scumbag. Comes in, wanted to have this fucking wonderful team, played one game, I think it was against LHX, and the guy said, this is not the way the game was meant to be played. And we all know LHX is a magician, but how are you supposed to play? It's a fucking video game. It's not like we're in real life here. So cry me a river, go suck your mom's titty, and get out of our league. He lasted one game. Simmed all his games, and I think he's been banned since. I just got rid of him. I didn't want to fucking deal with that loser. But neither here or there. Next person was Mr. Klein. I honestly think now, looking back in hindsight, that he took Ray Bork. If he was a true Philadelphia fan, the way he talks about it with pride, the Liberty Bell, Rocky Balboa, fucking ding dongs all around. He should have went with Eric Lindros. What the fuck's his problem? He went with Ray Bork. He went with a Boston boy. Hey, you're not a true Philadelphia person. I would have went Lindros if I was a true Philadelphia guy. I went with Solani because I'm a true Solani fan. Look at this fucking hat. The Winnipeg Jets from back in the day. I had Solani's old jersey from back in the day. I'm a Solani fan. I was a Winnipeg Jets fan, as I am still to this day. Maybe even though they're not the real Winnipeg Jets, because that's the Phoenix fucking Coyotes who play out of Amalie Arena or not Amelia, whatever the fucking University of Arizona. Whatever, or Tempe, whatever the fuck it is. Some shithole high school that they're playing in now. But neither here or there. Then it was Aftershock who took Medano. I probably wouldn't have changed it. Aftershock played one season and disappeared. But he was the reason why we have this league. So I would never change it. It's called the Aftershock Cup for a reason. It's the Gentleman's Cup, whatever you want to call it, for a person who helps in the league as much as they do within one season. Aftershock need this league to happen. Everybody knows fucking construction workers in Massachusetts and Maine and everything like that. It's fucking garbage. It's garbage work. You work 14, 15 hours a day. Shocky, you're always going to be loved. Nobody can say shit about you. Sugar Valley went with McGillney. Looking back at it now with who's left on the fucking thing, a Jagger would have been better for him. Uh, maybe a Doug Gilmore, a Phil Housley, because the way you look at it, how much he values Rob Blake. I probably would have went with a Ray Bork at this point if Klein had gone Lindros. Then it was Mike Vick. He went with Alex Kovalev. I don't think he would change that pick even to this day. He would still probably stick with Kovalev, but we're doing the redraft based on what I think. I think he would have probably went like Paul Coffey or maybe a Phil Housley. Really depends. Because the more I'm looking at it now, if they're Italian, they might have a chance to be on his roster regardless of their ability for season. And Vic has shown the ability to be able to beat people with a subpar roster. So he's one of those few people that could do it. Then there was our wonderful friend Hines. Go fuck yourself, buddy. Red Death truck happened for a reason. Got hit by a fucking semi. Sucked dick in the back of alley. Owed $20 to a person in the states. And you Americans know what $20 is worth in Canada. It's worth $20 in Canada. In the US, it's probably 15 cents. Probably get a couple bubble gums or Bazooka Joes. And you can hear probably Sam in the background barking her brain out for no reason, probably the fucking garbage man. Who knows? But Hines made a trade. For some reason, I think it was Aftershock, but Aftershock ended up with Medano. I can't remember who he traded with, but he did trade with somebody. I can't think of it right now. But he ended up going Doug Gilmore, Jaromir Jagr. That's what happened. I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but I would not change those. Unholy's still benefiting from those two to this day. I think Gilmore is getting long in the tooth for the Knights, but Jagger's going to be around for the next. Jagger's around until 2022 or 2021. He's got fucking years of it. And Jagger's still staying really good for a fucking long time with all the teams he played for. Still fucking was down there. He played with Dallas. He played with Detroit. He played with fucking. Name a team he won it. You could probably take a dartboard out, throw it in. Jagger's played with that team. Bombjack took Eric Lindros. If Lindros had been taken by Klein, where the true Philadelphia ding-dongs should have fucking went with, is that much as little puppy Ed believes that Eric Lindros is like his man crush, but he's going to so quickly trade out for fucking Joe Thornton. True players, true fans do not trade their fucking like childhood idols or the players that they fucking grew up loving. You don't do that. You maybe put them on the block, but you don't trade them. You pick them. You take them where you can. Bombjack went Lindros. If possibly. From where? Don't know them. Sorry, I was expecting a package, I guess. Cross the street, not me. Okay, right. That's what happens when you have your own room, close the door, and hope that nobody hears you. But Sam goes and barks. Shut up. Now you come barging in. What the fuck? Calm down, Sam. Megathon sees fucking videos back to back to back to back. Sam comes in and interrupts and makes a presence. The next video, the next person is little baby wolf. Little Wolfie. Brett Hall made him like a second revelation. I probably would have still took Hall because there's not like I wouldn't say it's not there any good players left at this stage, but you have Brendan Shanahan, you have Patrick Roy, you have fucking Dominic Hasek was available. I think I got Hasek in the second or third round. It really depends on what you wanted to do with your team, but he went with Brett Hall, and Brett Hall was very good to him for the first 2-3 years, and then he sent him out the pasture and fucking traded everybody on his roster ever since. And you're not a great GM. You suck. You're just like Klein, not fucking taking Lindros. Unless he was an Yzerman fan, then that's a different story. Quote me if you want, Klein. Tell me in the comments, are you an Yzerman fan or a loyal Eric Lindros fan of Philadelphia? Pre-Scott Stevens injury. Which I think Lindros never came back after it. After that, it was the Gaelic Gopher when he was the Manitoba Moose, or not the Manitoba, Minnesota Moose. He took Wayne Gretzky, which was weird because he ended up trading Gretzky pretty quickly. He ended up getting traded to Sammy Smith. And then Gretzky ended up with a few other people after that. But Gretzky, for some reason, in 95 is not a very good player. I would have probably passed on him. Maybe went with a Pat LaFontaine. Maybe a Dale Howardchuk. Maybe a Mogilny at this stage. Who knows how far Mogilny would have taken if he wasn't picked by Sugar Valley at that stage. Somebody else would have taken. There's only a few players in the league that really had fuck you speed in 95, and they would have been taken already at this stage. Minnesota Mullets took Paul Coffey. I don't think Segathon would have rejected the opportunity to take Paul Coffey. Or what's the word? Regret taking Paul Coffey. Goaltenders, he was never in his fucking cards because he was a good manual goaltender, still is to this day, elite. I think he would have probably been better with maybe a Phil Housley or Ray Bourque at this stage. But the thing is, Coffey's not with his team anymore. It really depends. If I would have said these players would have been here, this is where he would have went instead. It's really hard for me to tell at this stage, but trends always tend to play itself out. King Raff went to Phil Housley. Don't know. Probably would have stayed with Phil Housley because Phil Housley was like basically like Sean with Sandis Ozilish. Hartford Hotness took Dale Howardchuk. Remember, one season they lost it. Gone. Hartford Hotjets were a fucking flaming mess. I'm not going to try to redraft them because it wouldn't make a difference. Dink went Luke Robitaille. I don't think Dink would have changed this pick because Dink's Dink. You're not going to fucking challenge Dink. But if I were to have to redraft it, Theron Fleury would have probably been the pick. Fleury was picked 2 picks later to end the first round. Gamby with Brantford went to Scott Stevens. Smart move, but Gamby's roster was built for any team else. Anybody else who would have used Gamby's roster would have been happy with it, even for trade pieces for future seasons. That roster was stacked. But Scott Stevens would have been a solid pick nonetheless. And then Audubon took Theron Fleury, and I think the following pick to start the second round took Brendan Shanahan. Yeah, Brendan Shanahan took him in the second round. So that was my recap of the first season redraft. It really comes down to what you feel like your team should look like. But at the end of the day, it's your redraft. I still would have went Solani. Puss, I think it was Puss, because Puss's fucking name wasn't in there. I can't remember who Puss took that. Maybe I missed him. Who knows? But I know Nips was in there, but Nips was taking the dumpster fire. So maybe it was Troy Hill. And I think it was. I think you traded with Hines for that first overall pick, and then you took 2 in the second round. I think. I might be wrong. But neither here or there. Again, season 1 redraft and state of the W, Taipei Typhoons.